What's the story, Morning Glory? What is the word, Hummingbird? Thank you so much for clicking on my channel and for joining me for this lackluster review for a very lackluster show. The Real Housewives of New Jersey, Season 13, Episode 14, Rat in the Street. I'm late with this review because when it originally aired, there was a bad storm in my area. The power went out, so the recording did not happen. But y'all are not here for my excuses. Y'all, this show, The Real Housewives of New Jersey, it either needs to be put to bed or it needs a very serious revamp. This ain't it, y'all. This is not it, because how many more years are we going to have of siblings bickering? And that's what it boils down to. And whatever is going on between between Teresa and her brother Joe, this is the stuff that happens in families all the time. Why are we watching this on TV? Why is this good for TV? Now they're at the point where they're not even talking. Okay, so we're not even watching them bicker. They're not even talking. You have this over-the-top Louis character who just comes in like a bull through a china shop. He is just too aggressive with what the hell is going on. I could understand if he had all of that aggression, like if he was a damn politician or if he was like an advocate for, some organization or something, like he was really passionate about some type of cause. But you're on the Real Housewives of New Jersey and you're bringing all of this aggression and all of this heat because your wife, your soon-to-be wife, or now your current wife, doesn't get along with her damn brother. They're going through some sibling rivalry, sibling disagreement type of situation. You're bringing all of this energy, Louis, because your wife and her brother don't get along. I'm not understanding. Anyways, let's do the best we can, y'all. I'm so sorry, but this review is not going to be, it ain't going to be it, because I'm reviewing a show that just ain't it. Margaret. The episode starts off with Margaret and Fessler. Fessler comes over to see Margaret. Marge Sr. is there. And Fessler comes over with her mom and her mom's identical twin sister. Those two women, those identical twins, were the most interesting thing on this whole entire episode. They didn't say much, but they were the most interesting thing on this whole entire episode. I petition a spinoff for Fessler's mom and her twin sister, Carolyn and Marilyn. I petition a damn spinoff for Carolyn and Marilyn. I could watch them all day. I'd rather watch Carolyn and Marilyn eat soup than watch this drivel that's the Real Housewives of New Jersey. That's all I'm going to say about that. The twins were interesting. I would love to see more of them. Moving on to Dolores. So Dolores, they're having the celebration dinner for Frankie because he got the job of his dreams. And so everybody is there celebrating. It is Dolores. It is Frank. It is his sister. And it's also Paul. So they're all there at the restaurant. And Frank realizes that, hey, because we're including Paul, it doesn't mean that our dynamic has changed or that it's no more. No, he says it doesn't mean that our family dynamic is over. It just means that it's gotten bigger. So Frank is understanding that adding Paul to the equation doesn't mean that whatever him and Dolores had going on is over. It just means that it's just changed. Frank, it's going to be okay. Okay, it's going to be okay if, Dolores, if you and Dolores' lives are not so intertwined where you don't know where yours begins and where hers ends. It's going to be okay, Frank. In your time of need, I'm pretty sure Dolores will always be there for you. Okay, y'all are going to have plenty more family dinners because y'all are a very close-knit family. You, Dolores, the kids, y'all are a very close-knit family. So it doesn't matter who is in y'all's lives. Y'all will always be a close-knit family. It's just going to change a little bit, but Dolores will never completely abandon you. So Frank was happy because he's like, oh yeah, everything is still kind of like the same but different. So he's happy. They talk about the engagement. So Frank asked Dolores and Paul if they've been talking engagement, and Paul says yes. And then Frank asked Paul, well, do you know what kind of ring she wants? And Paul says, I already have it. In Dolores' confession, the producers asked her, so do you really believe that Frank has gotten you an engagement ring? And Dolores says that she really doesn't know. She says, I'm not going to put the cart before the horse. So, she'll believe it when she sees it. And yeah, so there's a possibility of, it is funny how, like, when I was listening to Paul talk, sometimes you can hear that Irish accent and sometimes you can't. And then Brittany, Frank's girlfriend, made a really dumb statement. And it's like, girl, America always gets such a bad rap with our educational system. And what you said about whether Paul knew English when he first arrived in the United States because his family immigrated here from Ireland. Girl, you should have kept that to yourself. That is just awful. That was so awful for her to say that. But anyways, let's move on. Teresa. So, wedding talk with Louis, and they were figuring out the seating arrangement for their wedding. Teresa says that she compared her family to Louis' family, and she says you can't even compare the two. She says Louis' family, they're so accepting of us, they're so supportive of us, and my own family, they're MIA, they're not there for me, they're just non-existent. Gia, so we find out that Gia had called her dad and told her dad, Joe Giudice, about the situation between their mother and her brother, Joe Gorga. And then evidently Joe Giudice called Louis, and it seems like Joe Giudice is an ally now of Louis. Like, because he doesn't really like Joe Gorga. Teresa tells us that every time that her and her ex-husband fought, they fought because of her brother, not because of his plethora of affairs, not because of the financial hellhole he put the whole family in. The only time that you and Joe Giudice had an argument was over your brother. So you're going to blame the ending or the ending of your marriage because y'all didn't argue otherwise. Anytime that y'all argued, according to you, Teresa, from what you said in this episode, according to you, anytime that you and Joe Giudice argued, it was over your brother. So your brother was the cause of your marriage ending. I guess that's what you're trying to say in a roundabout way. That's what you're telling us. My marriage ended because of my brother. Not because he put you in jail, not because of the financial ruin, not because of the fraud, not because of the affairs, none of that. Gotcha. They're planning a rehearsal dinner, and they invited Melissa and Joe, and Teresa was complaining that Melissa did an RSVP or something or other, but then finally Melissa got back to her and told her that they were not going to be able to make it because they're busy. And then Teresa says that Melissa is keeping my brother away from me. As if your brother doesn't have a mind of his own. If he wanted to show up at your damn rehearsal dinner, he would have shown up whether his wife wanted to be there or not. How much more can we take of Melissa and Joe Gorga going at it? Teresa and Joe Gorga going at how many more years can we take of Teresa and her damn brother not getting along? How many more years? And I feel like if this show continues in the path that it's been going, that there might be a time when we get, where it ends with Joe and Teresa, but there's going to be a continuation of Danielle and her brother. Speaking of Danielle, she's with her mom and they are talking about her brother and how, the rift between the brother and the rest of the family. And because Danielle's mother sided with Danielle, the brother iced out the mother as well. He doesn't talk to the mother as well. And her brother has a baby, has a little girl that she doesn't even see because of the situation between her and her brother. For her brother to be like this, I know that it has something to do with his wife. It had nothing to do with social media and him commenting on her social media post. It had everything to do with what I feel like Danielle might, because Danielle is reckless with her tongue. I feel like Danielle must have said something very hurtful about his wife, and he got protective of his wife, and he decided, like, okay, if that's how it's going to be, I'm going to choose my wife over y'all. That's what I feel like happened. That's my personal opinion. Jennifer. We see Jennifer and her brother. So her brother had a jewelry business in New Jersey. And over C19, the jewelry business floundered. It failed. So he went back to Turkey to get a wife. And because of C19 and all the restrictions on travel, she couldn't get her visa the first time around. So the second time around, she got approved for her visa. So now they're back in New Jersey. And I guess he's going to go back into the jewelry business. I don't know. But right now he's kind of struggling financially. So Jennifer did what a good sister does, and she helped him get an apartment. And it's a cute little apartment, and it's furnished, everything. And she was able to get them a discount on the rent because either she knew the realtor or she knew the owner of the building. I'm not really sure, but she knew somebody, and she was able to get a discount for the rent. And that was a really sweet thing for her to do. And it's beautiful to see how Jennifer and her siblings are really there for one another, because we see her and this brother, we see her with her other brother, and it's beautiful to see because it's refreshing after, we climb out of the muck that is Teresa and Joe. So that was really nice. She tells her brother about her husband and the issues that they're having, and that because her brother said something about his wife complains that, when he comes home, he just goes straight to sleep. And the wife has been waiting for him all day to come home from work and spend time with him. And all he does is he just goes straight to sleep. And so Jennifer says something like, well, lucky her, because, my husband, when he comes home from work, he just goes straight to the pool house. She loves talking about how Nabil goes straight to the pool house when he comes home from work, which I find kind of hard to believe. But anyways, if that's what she says, and that's what it is. And I'm going to start calling him Pool House Bill, because every time she talks about her husband, she has to mention how he bypasses the whole entire family and goes straight into the pool house to be alone, to be by himself. This is her favorite story to tell, besides how Margaret ruined her children. Moving on from there, we have Rachel. So she's talking with her husband and Jaden, and they're talking about the whole adoption thing and how right now the attorney, I guess, is in the process of locating the birth mother, because she has to be notified of this adoption thing. So to give her an opportunity to either agree to it and sign her rights away voluntarily, or if she's going to contest it, then I don't know, has to go to court or something. I don't know. So they're letting Jada know what's up with that they're looking for the birth mother. And then Rachel says, at any point, if you don't feel comfortable with this process, just let me know. And the boy tells her that, no, this is what I've always wanted. Like he wants to see this to the end. He's always wanted to be adopted by Rachel, so he wants to go through with it. And like I said, it's a nice thing for her to do, obviously, to legally make him her son. But I don't think it's worth the risk of having the birth mother come back into the picture and possibly disrupting the peace and tranquility that they've created. And that's what I'm afraid of. Now, if the birth mother is found and she's like, whatever, I don't care, I'll sign whatever you want me to sign, wonderful. But I'm just worried that it might not go that smoothly and that she might be disruptive. So, but I guess it's worth it for them to go through this. It's worth it for them to take that risk with the birth mother because they want it so badly. I feel like, you can be just as loving and giving and caring as a stepmom or a bonus mom as you would be as an adoptive mom. All you have to do, if you want to make sure that Jaden is protected legally and is able to get, his share of the inheritance without any problems, because, if anything should happen to Rachel and she wants to make sure that Jaden gets something from her, and you don't want him to have to go through hoops legally to try to get his fair portion or whatever, just have a decent will or trust set up so that he'll be able to inherit what he's supposed to inherit. I don't understand why we have to go through this adoption process with a woman who y'all are so worried about is going to be disagreeable to this whole thing. Moving on. So I forgot to mention, what's his name? Paul. Him and Dolores are planning an Irish themed party. And now we're at the part where everybody's getting ready for the party. And we see Teresa and Louie. And this is where I felt like Louie was just doing the most. He was doing way too much. He was putting 20 on 10 with this whole scene. And he was like very aggressive with, I don't want your brother to come to the wedding. And I don't know, why is Louis so red? His like skin, his pallor, his tone, why is he so red? He looks like a lobster. And when he's so angry and his eyes are bulging out of his head and his skin is so red, it is a scene. It is such a scene to behold. So he's like, veins popping out of his neck, eyes bulging out of his head, his skin is beet red, and he's going on and on and on about how he just cannot stand Joe Gorga and how dare they say that Teresa's miserable. And he is wired. Okay, Louis is absolutely wired. And he's really bothered, okay, that they called her miserable. And he says that he is ready to react. And he says that Joe has been gaslighting and manipulating his sister Teresa, and he doesn't even want them to come to the wedding. And he's hoping that when he sees them at Paul's party, that he's just not going to go off on this. And I'm just like, what's wrong with you, Louis? Like, what are you on? What is going on here? You just leave them alone. You don't want to fool with them. They make you this upset. They make you this angry. Just ignore them. Just leave them alone. We've already seen them say that, hey, after the wedding, they're done. We're not even sure if they're going to show up for the wedding. I don't know if they did or if they didn't. I don't keep up with this mess outside of the show. I have no idea. But I was looking at Lou and I'm like, Lou, you need to relax. You're going to stroke out. You need to relax because it's just not worth it. He talked about how maybe Joe Gorga is threatened by him because Joe is the patriarch of the family. And so he's threatened by Louis possibly becoming the patriarch of the family. Y'all, the whole thing is so silly to me. Y'all don't like each other, just stay away from each other. But then you wouldn't have a show. Exactly, because we don't need y'all on this show. How many more years are we going to have of Teresa versus Joe versus Louis versus Melissa? How many more years of this do we have to endure? And the funny thing is that, okay, aside from all of that, we didn't see too much of Margaret. But I guess they're trying to make Margaret out as the villain this year, you know, with whatever she told or whatever she was saying about Melissa and this other guy in the car kissing. And this Laura chick is going to be exposing Margaret. And they said, so I don't know if it was in this episode or next week's episode, where somebody had said, well, the reason why Melissa never went that hard on Margaret, which I don't understand what they mean by that, because whenever Margaret would talk about Louis and Teresa's relationship, Melissa was always tell her, stop talking about it because she's never going to leave this guy. So what's the point? But anyways, because they claim that, well, Melissa didn't really go hard on Margaret and shutting her up whenever she talked about Teresa and Louis, it's because Margaret had info on Melissa. And the info, I guess, was that she was kissing this guy in this car. Y'all, next week is the finale. Okay, next week is the finale. And what kills me is that this season, other than Melissa, other than Teresa and Joe Gorga's storyline, we have this storyline with Margaret and this friend of hers who had all this information on Margaret. And this friend never materialized. So what was the point? She never came up to give her side of the damn story. It was always, he said, she said, between Teresa and Jennifer and Margaret. We don't know who the hell to believe because we were not there when these conversations were had. We were not there when Laura was spilling all the tea on Margaret to Teresa and Jennifer. I never knew of Margaret being best friends with this chick. This whole entire time I've been watching this show, I never knew that Margaret was best friends with this Laura chick and that she was confiding all of her deepest, darkest secrets to Laura. And now Laura has turned against her and became a big part of the show, but she never materialized. What sense does this make? What sense does this make? Now, talking about things that don't materialize and things that don't make any damn sense. Margaret and Fessler are supposed to be best friends, right? Explain to me why it felt like when Fessler came over with her mom and her aunt, why did it seem like Margaret was meeting them for the very first time? Or at the very least, it seemed like Marge Sr. was meeting the twins for the very first time, if Fessler and Margaret were supposedly really good friends. Or maybe I misunderstood what was going on because I really wasn't paying that much attention. Thank you for joining me. I really do appreciate it. On your way out, please don't forget to rate the video. If you like this content, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.